Okay, look at it. Basically, it's when you're at the west side, the east side of the Temple Mount. Sorry, the west side of the Temple Mount. So people say before they leave the Temple Mount, they're basically there. They're behind where the Heichal used to stand. That's where they do their last prayers. So this is a basic schematic according to the Ram. There's space between. This is the Heichal. He makes it square almost. At the entrance to the gate to the tent, at the entrance of the tent of meeting, Petach Holoboy is always a reference to the Mizbeach and to the courtyard. Lachshir Kol HaRuchot says here this includes all directions, anywhere in the courtyard. It didn't say exactly where. It didn't say Safona. With regards to the most holy sacrifices, for example, the burnt offering, it says Safona L'fnei Hashem. It has to be B'shachado Tol Yarcham Safona on the north side of the altar. Here it just said it has to be done at the entrance of the gated meeting, but then say where. V'im shechatan b'Heichal. Let's say he even slaughtered it within the Heichal. How do you get up there? Whatever it is, and somehow it ends up there. Ksherim, so it's all still kosher. V'im shechatan b'Gagosh Heichal. Let's say they're on the roof of the temple. What are they doing on the roof of the temple? I didn't even get there. Either way, psulim. That's puzzle. She'ein hagagot ruyot l'shchita klal. The roofs of the structures in and around the temple are not kosher for shchita. You can't consider Kodesh already. Kodesh, not Kodesh. What we said today, who's going to stand on the roof of the Beis HaMikdash and declare that he's here? And why aren't you believing that I'm here, Mashiach? Remember? Mashiach is going to stand God Beis HaMikdash and he's going to scream, Novin, Novin, look, Mashiach is here. Why Mashiach had to scream he's here? Remember? Because if you don't believe me, so look at the Ori, look, everything's Mashiach-like. That's exactly what the Navi was told earlier today. Remember? Haloya data. Sometimes even a Navi doesn't get it. And the angels are so surprised. Don't you see? You're looking at your redemption. Okay. Shlamim sheshechatan kodem she'ipatachu dal Torah echal. Let's say they slaughter the Kudshim before the Kohanim had a chance to open the doors of the temple. Pesulin. So those are puzzle. Shnemar petach moed. Petach means the entrance, or petach, but it also means, was shown for opening, so it has to be open. Bizman shepathuach, at the time when it's what? Open. If the gate of the Heichal, the gates, the two doors, are there. Remember the Ulam, to get into the anteroom of the temple, there was no doors. There's only a door into the Kodesh. Afilu ayu dal totav mugafot, hareza kino'ul. Let's say it's just closed. They don't have the lock. Remember, Kohanim actually have keys to these things. Okay? So they're closed. Like the doors here. We close our door and then we actually lock it. Aval parochet shelav ena posela. Let's say the curtain is still down. Remember, the doors have curtains also. Then they push the curtain aside. So if the curtain's down, that's fine. Remember, every gate and every door had a curtain, a decorative curtain also. What were the curtains made out of in the temple? They were basically, techelet, argamon, telat, shani, sheish, the usual stuff. And were they embroidered with? Kruvim, and the other things like lions, oxen, and what's the other thing? And vultures, Nesher, Shor, and Aryeh, right? And Kruvim. Okay, those are the things, and they basically those were the motif in the temple, right? Everything was decorated with those, and so that's not possible if the curtain's down. Okay, and we also saw they were making new curtains all the time. There was the curtain that they used, the parochet, and then there was the masach of the Ol Moed, and apparently in Second Temple times they always had two gigantic curtains divided between Kodesh and Kodesh Kodeshim, and they'd replace them like every single year. A new gigantic woolen curtain that was embroidered and had to be super fancy. Ha'olah v'asham v'ashlamim. These three korbanot, it's the burnt offering, the guilt offering, and the peace offering. Bein shel yachid, bein shel tzibur, whether it's an individual's offering or it's community offering. Is rikat dam shloshtan al gabei mizbeach shaveh le'olam. The way the blood is thrown on the altar is the same for them. Okay? It's always the same way, same process. Throw the blood on the altar. What's not included in this? The chatos. How do you put the blood on the altar? By the way, it's called the zrika. There are many different ways to apply blood to the altar. Sometimes it's actually applied with the finger. Sometimes it's thrown. Sometimes it's spilled at the base. So we're going to see this one. These ones are thrown. When the Kohen takes the blood in the mizrak, that's why that's the cup in which he caught the blood. The cup that doesn't have a flat bottom, so we can't put the cup down, otherwise it would spill. And by the way, we said mizrak. Why is this cup called a mizrak? What's the shortish of the word mizrak? Yeah, it's a throwing cup. Zorek mimenu ba mizrak. He throws from the blood that's in this throwing cup. That's basically mizrak, what it means. Shtei zrikot al shtei zaviyot hamizbeach ba'alachson. So he just has to throw the blood onto the corner of the altar on a diagonal. That means if you have the altar from a bird's eye view is basically a square, not including the ramp going up to it. So it's a square, right? You want the blood on all sides of the altar. So what do? You just have to hit two corners. Let's say this is the altar. If it was square, if I hit this corner, the farther one, and this corner, I splash the blood has gotten onto what? All four corners in the quickest way possible. Make sense? So two corners are going to get the blood. Can the Kohen choose two opposite corners? There's two pairs to choose from, right? Is the Kohen's choice? No, it's not the Kohen's choice. There's actually a procedure. Okay, what's the procedure? So let's read this. It has to be on the bottom half of the mizbeach. Remember, there's this red decorative line that divides the altar, the height of the altar. Some blood is applied above the line, and some blood of different korbanos is applied below the line. So all these sacrifices have their blood applied where? Below the line. Al keren mizrachit tzfonit. What's keren mizrachit tzfonit? That's the east north. In English we reverse it. We say northeast. Where's the northeast corner of the altar? So if we were American style, the way we orient the map is we put north on top, right? So the Heichal would be in the west, the Mizbeach is in the center, and the gate is to the right, right? Heichal is in the west, Mizbeach is in the center. So the northeast corner is basically the top right corner on this map. If north is on top, so this is the top right corner of the Mizbeach. The Al Keren Ma'aravit Romit. And on the southwest corner, southwest is the bottom left corner. Top right, bottom left. And the bottom left corner is basically to the left of the ramp. That's where the Kohen throws the blood. So he applies it there. Okay, fine. Umit kaven kishi izrok adam al keren, and his intention is he has to have this intention kavanah when he throws it on this corner. She adam makif al zaviyot kamin gam, that the blood should somehow be on both sides. Gam. A gam is apparently gamma. I haven't seen this though. He's trying to basically make an L shape. Okay, the blood should end up. Yeah. So what does a gamma look like? Gamma looks like that. Alpha, beta, gamma. Oh, I was thinking delta. Delta is a triangle. Okay. Alpha is basically lowercase a, and beta is a funny looking B, and gamma is the thing we did, and delta is a triangle. Okay, good. So we know our Greek. Good. It's all Greek to me. Why didn't the Rambam mention, let's say, a resh or a dalet?
A resh is rounded.
Yeah. Dalet extends. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There you go.
Is it not because the Gemara uses it?
The Gemara uses it. So why didn't Chazal use a resh and a dalet? They had a shurus back then. We saw also when it says how they used to anoint the high priest and the king. So the king basically, it says, all around his head like a crown, and the high key or kai, which and Zmachlokas how that was drawn. So they have an X or a C. Well, it looks like an X or a C, and they're thinking, wait a minute, I understand if it was meant to look like an X. So there's no Ashurus character that looks like an X. But if you meant to say a C, why don't you just say kaf? Yeah. Good question. So maybe that's not what the intention was. Okay. That's an old. We look back on YouTube. We saw the different opinions there. Okay. So this is an intention. He has to get it on the below the red line, and we said the northeast corner and the southwest corner. Fine. And he says it has to be like this on gam. So it can mean gam. Gam in this case means the Greek letter and not the Hebrew word also. Kadei sheyimatzei hadam shel shtei matanot. Al arba kol le'amizbeach. What's the result? 2 applications of blood, four walls of the altar, 4 sides of the altar. It says regarding the burnt offering and the peace offering that the blood has to be applied around the altar. Right? And the same applies to the guilt offering. Whatever blood is left in the cup, so he pours on the south part of the yesod. And as we saw, wait a minute, the yesod runs along the west side of the altar mostly, and it comes to an end basically when it gets to the south side. There's basically just a little bit there, and we saw also it's a machlokas. How much is it actually there at the south side? Does it go beyond this? See, this is remember the Rashi Rambam machlokas. This is the west side of the altar, so there's a yesod here, and then does it go? It goes just a little beyond, and then a little bit into the south side, or is it not even against the south side? Remember this picture? Okay, well, so look back. I think you should have an illustration there also. Okay, but that's where he spills the extra blood. What? Let's see other shitas. Oh, thank God they put the shitas here. We should mention the other shitas. However, according to Tosfos, the Tosfos say regarding that halacha, we saw that slaughtering a korban like a shlamim to the north of the heichal, to the south of the heichal, in the space between where it's basically already not the main part of the courtyard. He says you're not supposed to slaughter korbanos there. That's what Tosfos is believed. And if you slaughtered on the roof, remember that? What about the second floor of the temple? You said that it's kosher if he's in the actual temple and he slaughters. You shouldn't be there, but you did it. On the roof, it's not. Wait a minute. The second temple had 2 floors. Remember? What was on the second floor of the temple? It was basically designed just like the first floor, except there was no kalim there, and there was no service there. There was no menorah there. It was just a big, beautiful room, just like the downstairs. And there was also a paroches that divided its latter half from it. And the only point to that was that there was trap doors there, so they can lower people down into the Kodesh Kodashim. That's the only reason why they had the second floor of the temple. So they said, wait a minute, maybe the second floor of the temple is even holier than the Kodesh Kodashim. Why? Kodesh Kodashim, the Kohen Gadol goes in there once a year at least. And the upper floor, they only actually went there when they needed to, once every 7 years, to check how things are doing. So perhaps that's a holier place by this definition. Okay, was it a mitzvah or is it just a convenience? If the way the Rambam defines what makes a Kodesh Kodashim holier than the Kodesh, limited access. So the Rambam doesn't say that the Aliyah is even holier because they only go up there once every 7 years. That whole thing is only go up there once every 7 years, not because there's a mitzvah or prohibition. It's just there's nothing doing up there. But if there was necessity, you would go up there even more often. Okay. So the question is, what about upstairs?
What was the first purpose of?
Floor was there so that they could access the Kodesh Kodashim, the upper story above the Kodesh Kodashim, to lower people down by elevators, the boxes on ropes, so that they could get into the Kodesh Kodashim not through the main way in case they had to fix something or clean something. So they weren't supposed to let regular people just go into the Kodesh Kodashim, right? I'll be regular people. Like Kohen who has to do whatever it is, he has to fix the floor or to apply. It says, remember, they're always adding gold plates to the Kodesh Kodashim. They wanted to plate the entire thing with gold, so they had a running fund. Solomon plated it with gold, and then all that gold was taken away by basically the Babylonians and other despoilers. So in Second Temple times, they had a running fund to eventually coat the entire place with gold. They started with the back wall, where they had new kruvim there, and they were constantly adding gold. Okay, so assuming that when they got a new plate, a new section of wall, just like let's say they have a shul, what do? Someone could add something to make the shul look nice, so they put up a new plaque there, right? This new southern wall, the western wall of the shul, or the Mizrach wall, or the Aron Kodesh is donated by Mr. and Mrs. Goldberg, whoever gave the money, right? So they used to put in new plaques. So this upper floor of the temple was there for access purposes, but it was also kept very nice. So the question is, what about going up there and slaughtering? According to the Kesef Mishneh, kosher. He slaughtered there. He wasn't supposed to, but it's kosher. Das Aruch HaShulchan, Pastor. Okay, machlokas. We'll see. If somebody ever ends up with his shlamim, his bowl up, and it ends up in the second floor of the temple, and he slaughters it there, is it still kosher? I don't know. And he also says about opening up the gates in the morning, shlamim. Dinzen emar davka bekorban shlamim v'lo b'shar korbanot. This whole thing a shlamim slaughtered before they opened up the temple gates. That's puzzle. That was said regarding what? Shlamim, not the other sacrifices. According to Tosfos, dinzehu b'chol korbanos habehema nishchatim ach lo b'korbanos ha'ofa menachos. Tosfos say that just like it applies to shlamim, it applies to anything else that's a zevach, that's slaughtered. It doesn't apply to bird sacrifices because bird sacrifices are, the whole malika thing, and menachos are made out of meal. Okay, let's look at the next halacha. We're finishing vav. It says here, according to Rabbi Ephraim, and this was brought by the Ravid also. Only in the chatas did they pour the extra blood onto the yesod. So what do they do with the blood? I guess they poured it out somewhere else. Oh. By the way, what do they do with all the blood? The blood they apply to the altar, to the mizbeach. Every day there's blood put on the mizbeach. What happened eventually to that blood?
There was a river.
No, that's on the floor. That's on for everything in the world on the floor. They would basically flood the courtyard, and it will all get washed out, right? But what about the mizbeach? Some blood is applied up on the top of the mizbeach, also above the red line.
But there are holes.
Well,
There are holes.
no, the blood just stays on the mizbeach. The mizbeach is basically plastered over. It's like a wall. It looks like a white wall like this. They put blood on the wall of the mizbeach, the outer wall. So what eventually happens to that blood? No, eventually they clean it off, and they'd re-whiten the mizbeach. It says there were times a year when they would actually, sometimes they're cleaning it, and other times they just paint the mizbeach white again. Yeah. You guys remember this? It was in Hilchot Beis Bechira. Let's look at this on the mizbeach. Here, this is an important thing. Good thing we review this. Where is it? It says here, so they used to have, let's say, chut shel sikra. Sikra is the red line. Okay. Alone. Okay. Where did I write it here? Let's say that they claim. Okay. Okay. At the beginning here, it says how to build the mizbeach. Okay. I'm going to clean it. Where we mentioned this. Okay. I forgot where already, but we mentioned this. You know what? We'll make a note of this and we'll get to that afterwards. Okay. But they had to clean the mizbeach every now and then, and they had to re-whiten it basically before the holidays, right? Okay. So they didn't leave the mizbeach red. It's like also you mentioned that they would flood the mizbeach, they'd flood the azara, and then it would all wash out. That which washed out, they could then sell to farmers. What's blood meal? What's bone meal? You heard of these things? Blood meal and bone meal? You heard of that? Slaughterhouses. They get a lot of extra bones from their animals and a lot of blood. Fertilizer. Blood meal, ground up blood, and bone meal, ground up bone. So that was one of the products of the temple. So it says that they would actually sell those things to people who wanted to use them as fertilizer. Basically, it's a type of pidyon. It's like these things, they don't, technically it's not me'ilah to use them because the mitzvah's already been done, but it's still temple property. So the temple, Gizbar would sell it, and make money for the temple. Ushar adam nishpachin al gag hayasoda dromi. Okay, we saw that. Chata'oda nechalot. Let's say if chatas that's eaten, as opposed to what? We said the previous halakha described burnt offerings, guilt offerings, and peace offerings. This one's the chatas, sin offerings. They're a different category. The blood is applied differently. And by the way, he's going to make a distinction between the ones that are eaten and the ones that are not. What chatas is not eaten? There are certain special communal sacrifices that are called chatas, that their blood service is different than the regular one. The blood is brought, let's say, into the heichal, right? Yom Kippur type chatas. So that blood is sprinkled near the aron, sprinkled on the proches. Some just have sense. And certain chatas in those cases are not eaten eventually. Like on Yom Kippur, there was a chatas that was eventually eaten at night by the Kohanim. There was a chatas that wasn't eaten. Daman ta'un arba matanoth al arba kronoth mizbeach hachitzon mechatzia mizbeach ulumala. You have these sin offerings, the type of regular person sin offering they're eating. Or let's say the ones brought in holidays in Rosh Chodesh. Every Rosh Chodesh and every holiday, there's a he-goat as a sin offering, right? That's eaten by the Kohanim. So that is 4 matanos, 4 applications of the blood on 4 corners of the Mizbeach, the outer Mizbeach. And it says on the top half. How tall is the coin? Where's the top half? You see the schematic. How tall was the Mizbeach? Look at this schematic over here. Okay. So basically, the Mizbeach, the Yesod is 5 tefachim high, another 30 tefachim up to this point, right? To the Sovev, right? Where's this Chut Shel Sikra? Chut Shel Sikra, Hayach Gur Be'emsa Mizbeach, Lavdil Bein Damin Alim Ladamin HaTachtonim, Nimsa Gofo Min Haaretz Ad Mekom HaMaracha, Teisha Amot Pachot Tefach. So the Mizbeach was basically 9 amos tall, okay? And halfway up you have this. So a Kohen, if you wanted to get, let's say, to the Sovev, it's Shloshim Tfachim. How high is Shloshim Tfachim? Divide by 6 to get an amma. So it's 5 ammas up there, right? How much is 5 ammas? Each amma is basically half a meter. So it's 2.5 meters. Or an amma is 48 centimeters. Okay? That's how weird. Rav Chaim Noah's scale. So 5 times 4.4, right? 2.4 meters. So regular Kohen, he has to somehow get up there. So how's he going to get that high? If he's not a giant. So it means he's going to have to go up to the Sovev. He's going to have to access the Sovev by one of these ramps, right? Okay. That's how he got up there. You know what I saw just today? My son showed me something interesting. You guys have tape measures? Your toolbox, you have a tape measure?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a tape measure here. Here, the tape measures are messed up. You know why? It doesn't have foot, feet, and inches. Instead, it has centimeters and meters and millimeters. Okay, that's already kind of weird. So you have to get used to using the tape measure. So we have a tape measure. Kids know it, and we have to measure things around the house. We sometimes do projects. Fine. My son pulled out a new tape measure out of its box today. It's just like my tape measure, except it also has a scale of Chazonish Etzbaot and Chazonish Tfachim and Amos, and Rav Chaim Noah's Etzbaot, Tfachim, and Amos.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And it basically, like we've been saying all along, every 2 centimeters, according to Rav Chaim Noah, is how many? Every 2 centimeters is an etzbah. And like I'm telling him, I showed my son, look at this. I take my fist like this. From there to there is exactly 8 centimeters and 4 etzbah. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how it works out. And it's pretty cool. I can do that. You know, I show people that's how you measure for this. I've measured it many times. It comes out exactly this space, 8 centimeters. Okay. So it's quite impressive. They do it. And the box says it's Meter Yehudi, a Jewish tape measure. Wow, amazing. Okay. So, yeah, get one. I don't know where he got it. I gave it to him in school. I guess he got a prize for learning Mishnahs or something. That's the most important thing. God only created candy for one reason. Candy is actually a poison. Throughout most of history, what did Chazal say to incentivize children to, let's say, stay up for the Seder? What?
They use honey.
No, they use shkedim. It goes in klayos. It goes in nuts and parched wheat. Okay? Nowadays, we do have parched wheat-like things, but we put too much sugar into it. Or we just make candy. We just skip the nuts and the dried fruit, and we go straight to the candy. So candy is basically a form of poison. Okay? It's bad. It's bad for you in so many ways. Yet, there is one good thing about it. Use it to incentivize children. So if you're not going to give your kid shkedim and kleos, I gave for my son this Shabbos. We're sitting right here. I was trying to do this. I had a bag with peanuts, almonds, and raisins. Tastes good. I eat that. So I'm trying to get it before he could go from shul to shul. You know, the kids who attend the shul and participate a little bit, they get a candy. He found in the summertime it's great. He wakes up at 5, goes to the Vasikim meeting, gets the prize, goes to the next meeting, gets the prize, goes to this thing, goes to that. All day long they're feeding him junk food. So I tried to give him, and Chavru said this idea: give him the nuts and the fruit beforehand, just the first thing in the morning, hand him a bag. He doesn't want it. I'm going to get candy. I need a taffy and a marshmallow and a bag of Bamba and a chocolate. It's more than Simchas Torah if you play your cards right, you know. So it's pretty terrible. But at least, thank God, at least it's incentivizing him to do the right thing. That's why God created candy in this world, just like flowers. David HaMelech wondered, why did God make lunatics and spiders and the usual thing? David HaMelech eventually had to realize that he disguised himself as a lunatic once. What was the third thing? forgetting my midrash.
Nobody ever remembers the third thing. This is like the fourth time this happened this
Really?
month, and
Okay.
Nobody
The
ever
point is, so I'm going to ask you, why did God create flowers, roses?
Mosquito.
Mosquito? No, it was a.
This was Titus.
Yeah, no, but Shlomo Melech was stung by the bee. I'm thinking about David HaMelech, his question, why did God make three things? And he was eventually he had to resort to using those three things. Okay, the point is, why did God create flowers? I'm talking about flowering trees. When you have a fruit tree, all the fruit that's on the tree originally starts as a flower, right? That's where you get apples and pomegranates from, and esrogs. They all start off as flowers. But why did God create, let's say, roses? Flowers that don't generate fruit. Oh man, you guys are still single. Oh, come on. They're to appease women. Okay. Flowers before Shabbos is a chova. Okay. Chok v'lo yavor is a strict requirement of al ein lehem shiur. That is, it's sufficient to give your wife a rose before every Shabbos. You don't have to go out for the 50 shekel bouquet every time or the 100 shekel if it's her birthday. One rose is sufficient. It does the trick. Okay. It's an obligation, but ein lehem shiur. And that's the only reason why God. Let's continue. So as the Kohen put the blood on the Mizbeach, it says here that he applies it there on above, remember above the line. It says here, Al Karnon Mizbeach, on the corners of the altar, or the horns of the altar. Wait a minute. We've already seen that the horns were these structures at the very top of the altar. But in the previous halacha, the horn means Keren Zavit, a corner. And basically the corner goes from the very top of the altar, where the horn is, until basically the bottom of the altar, against the ground. So how does a Kohen do this? When the Kohen takes the blood in the throw cup, he brings it toward the Mizbeach. He walks it toward the Mizbeach. And he puts his finger, in his right hand. That means the right etzba hayamanit. Normally, it already became in modern Hebrew that etzba refers to the index finger. But here he says it's the finger that's next to the thumb. You have said because etzba sometimes generally means other fingers. And Chazal, by the way, they take this from Chazal, this important one. Rabbi Rosen's linguist pointed this out. What do they call the names of them in modern Hebrew? The fingers, Gudal or Agudal. It's like Anachnu or Nachnu. Okay. Sometimes the aleph, the Chataf aleph, just drops off. So it's Agudal or Gudal. Etzba, because when it says the Gemara says when you do something with your etzba, it means this one, what we call the index finger. They call this one amma nowadays. Why? Because to measure an amma, you go from the top of the middle finger to the elbow. And they call this one kamitza. Why? Because when you do kamitza, use these ends over here. This is the last finger in the kamitza. It's not because this is its name, but that's what's called now. They call this one the zeret. Why? To measure a span of zeret, you go like this. Use your thumb and your pinky. So
really like that.
Yeah, so those are the names. But in the Rambam's time, this wasn't just called etzba. Normally, this is the main etzba. This is the one where it says just etzba stam. It's this one. But nowadays, in Hebrew, this is called etzba. Okay, it's also like kochav, the planets in the solar system. One of the planets is just called what? Kochav. In modern Hebrew, like in also Mishneh Hebrew, the planets have names. The visible planets, the ones that we've known about. So there's Chama, or the Shemesh, and there's Yereach, Levana, and then there's Stam Kochav. But everything is a Kochav. There's planets are Kochavei Leches, and every other planet, every other star is called Kochav also. Kochav is Mercury. Mercury's name in classical Hebrew is Stam Kochav, because that's what it's always been. And Venus is Noga.
That would make sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, okay. And then you have Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter. You have Ma'adim, Shabtai, and Sedek. Okay, those are their classical names in Hebrew.
Yeah.
Why is it weird? That's what they've always been called that. And Earth is called Haaretz or Kadur Haaretz. Earth, Tevel. Right. So these are the names. He says, but the point is, the Rambam says he describes which finger that the Kohen is supposed to use. Tovel etzbo aymanit hasmucha legudol badam. V'somech beetzbo hagadola mikan ugudal mikan. And he supports this finger with the big finger, the biggest, usually on a man's hand. The longest finger is the middle finger, right? And he says here that once he gets the blood on this index finger, he then supports it with the thumb and the middle finger, like this, these three fingers. Somech beetzbo hagadola mikan ugudol mikan umchate v'yored keneged chudashel karen. Mechatei isn't. What does it mean in this case? What does lichatei mean?
Purify.
It doesn't mean purify. In this case, it means conduct the service of the chata. It might be a purification. Like I'm trying to point out, chata is from the shorish sin, from sinning, sin, like an English word, sin, but it also means purification, which explains a lot of times why a chatas is brought, even though a sin has not been committed. Right? Chazal deal with this. There are many cases we've seen with the Nazir and everybody. Like, what has he done? According to many opinions, like the one the Rambam brings, the Nazir is a holy man. He didn't actually sin. And the chatas that's brought on the holidays, the higot as a sin offering, it's a purification offering. And this is also the way that the word is used in Yechezkel, okay? The inauguration through a purification. So him applying the blood in this way, this is the main service of the chatas. He has to slaughter the korban, catch the blood, bring it to the altar, and apply it ritually to the temple, to the altar. So umchatev yored, he actually applies it. So he goes to the corner. Let's see this. This is the standing corner of the altar. He takes his middle finger, his index finger, the blood's on that, and he goes right on the corner like this, such that his middle finger is against this side of the altar, and his thumb is on that side. It's like pinching it, and the middle and the index finger applies the blood in the line straight down, not splashing it on both sides, but applying it mamish on the edge of the corner. Okay, edgewise.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what he's supposed to do, and you could have just said that, tell the coin to, look at this, I happen to have fruit compote right here that they served us earlier today. So this looks like a cup of blood. So you could just said, dunk the index finger into here and apply it on the corner like that. But Allah says that he's supposed to actually use his other two fingers around the side to make sure he stays going down exactly on the corner. Okay? You'll never do this in your life. You're not a Kohen. I'm not a Kohen. Okay?
Cool.
No one ever gets a chance to do this. If you do such a thing, you're performing service. You're Zar Karev Yumat, right? It used to be Dei Shemayim. So we don't do this, but you have to teach the Kohen how to do this type of thing. Okay. Until he gets all the blood off of his finger. We said how much blood does he have to catch? He has to catch enough blood in the cup in order to be able to do this process. Okay? Dip his finger in the blood and apply the blood. By the way, the Kohen applying his blood with the finger is also done to the Mitzorah, by the way, in other cases. Well,
If he's dipping his finger in the blood,
yeah,
then there's going to be blood on the back side of his finger.
eventually.
Yeah. So when that
It doesn't like that.
happens, does he flip it around?
I don't know.
Does he, wipe his finger on the?
Maybe we'll get to it. I don't know. It's a good question. I want to see. Is this one of the things that they've been doing? Is they have a practice Korban Pesach. They actually show, if this were Korban Pesach, this is what we do. Here's how we slaughter it. Here's how we catch the blood. Here's how we throw it. It's like, we're doing Korban Pesach with just it's not. And they have real Kohanim doing it. But Korban Pesach is much more basic. Like we said, Korban Pesach is catch the blood, splash the blood on two corners. Kohanim, we're doing it like this. It's almost not serious. Well, it is serious, but it's not like they take the halacha seriously because they're just passing it like that. It's more like it's about the pomp and the circumstance of the holiday. And then the blood is just applied, right? And this, they actually have to climb up to the right height and apply it gently. So yeah, chatas is not done en masse. On a holiday, you have a lot of shlamim and ulas coming. Chatas is, a lot, quantitatively speaking, a lot less. Okay, we'll see. And he has to do this at every single corner or every single spot. It says, Rashi says, by the way, that he uses all 5 fingers. Okay, and yeah, interesting.
Which corner did he start at?
What?
Which corner did he?
So we're going to start there. Okay.
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 Just assume that if he says each and every corner, that it's already said. Okay.
Let's say he's off by the corner. The corner, how big is the corner? It's like, how big is payoff? A person in a field, a square field of wheat, how big is the payoff? So he makes a corner this big or that big? Or makes all 4 corners almost touch in the middle. How big is a corner? Like Rav Schechter says, the world's tallest midget.
Yeah.
So what is considered corner? He starts the corner. Let's say he's off by an inch, a centimeter, 2 etzbas. So basically, as within an amma, to dip his finger for every corner, he does a new dip. See, he wipes off the extra blood on what? On the edge of the throw cup. And then he dunks his finger in there again. Second time. So basically, every time he's done with the corner, he wipes it off on the outside. That means the outside of the cup. Don't put it back into the blood that was already used, and he gets new blood. By the way, blood rubs off easily. It congeals very fast, right? Yeah. Why does it do that? Platelets. Yeah. What?
This, and then he gets rid of the others.
Yeah. Okay. And let's see here. Ain b'chol korbanot korbanot that the Kohen has to apply it with his finger application, as opposed to, let's say, throwing it. Shneimar above it, taval hakohen etzbo badam. Says explicitly in Leviticus, he is to dip his finger into the blood. Mitzarich sheyeh sham dam kedei tevilah lo yishei sapeg etzbo badam. Remember, it says enough to dip his finger in blood, not just like stamp it. If, let's say, you had stamp just a little bit of water here, a little bit of blood here, enough to get it wet. No, he actually has to have it immerse it in there. Now I'm going to take a drink. Realize a lot of talking, a lot of drinking. You guys had drinks? You had everything you need? Being taken care of? I don't know if it has to be that deep. Just it's already, look, when you want to apply things with your finger, let's say you're applying with this finger, even beyond the first knuckle is already not really applicable. Tarte mashma. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nichye b'dvaro. Where's everybody? It's been a strange month, Very quiet. I don't know. Al tiftach pela satan. Eventually the kids will show up. It's been a long week. Okay. Let's see here. This halacha. Yeah. So the Chattas is unique because the Torah specifically says, instead of vizarak, vizarku b'nei Aaron hakohanim et adam al mizbeach saviv. With regards to the old, it says the b'nei Aaron shall throw the blood all around the altar, and you see that they actually did that. In this case, he has to dip his finger in the blood. Here's your question: from where does he start? I see that the altar has 4 sides. Well, really, where's he slaughtering it? It's a Chattas, so it's slaughtered on the north side. So probably one of the northern corners, right? That's your Havamina, right? Ole bakevesh ufoneh limino. Nope, he has to go up the ramp. That's on the south side. He was basically had a long walk. He was starting at the north side of the altar. He heads to the south, goes up the ramp, and he turns right. Umahalech ala sovev, and he then gets to the sovev. How do you get to the sovev? There's an access ramp. You look in the schematics. Smaller ramp. It's kind of narrow. That takes him to the midsection of the sides of the altar. Vinotain b'karen dromit mizrachit tchila. He first applies the blood to the southeast corner. In this case, the Rambam instead of saying mizrachit dromit, he put the north-south direction before the east-west direction. Notice? So we put it on the southwest corner, the southeast corner. That's the one he encounters first. He goes up the half ramp and southeast corner. V'achar kach b'karen ashniyas muchala she mizrachit tzfonit. And he continues along the east side. He goes to the northeast corner. And then to the next corner, which is the northwest. And then to the fourth corner, that's one next to that, the adjacent one, which is the southwest corner. So he starts at the southeast and goes counterclockwise from a bird's eye view, and he ends up at the southwest corner. Hope that answers the question. Yeah. And then at the base of the altar, where he started this, that's where he pours the leftover blood. As it says, okay, and all the blood he should spill at the base of the altar of the burnt offering. Mizbach olah. Zeh yesod dromi. So that's the south corner. That's the south base. By the way, there is no Yesod at that point. They show a picture over here, by the way. The Yesod basically only is on the north side and the west side. So what's on the south side there? Where the base would be. Okay. So I think they mentioned this here. Lachar shemashtem medina dam yoredem yasuviv lakarka azara. He's actually standing on the floor of the azara. V'shofechet shir adam lisod adromi asmuk l'makom yiridato. And there's a little bit of the base there. If you look at the schematics, actually not there, but it would be there. It's as though it's there. Remember, we said that the way to build a mizbeach is by building these squares one on top of the other. So the yesod is basically a complete square, and then you just leave it out at the south side and the east side for some reason. It's just not there. It's like it's there and it's not there. It's a placeholder. Interesting. There's a placeholder door. Remember we saw that? The Navi says there's a door entrance to the courtyard of the temple, and then to the temple itself. There's a door and it's just closed, a wicket. It's a doorway, but it's always to remain closed. Why? Navi asked the angel why, and says, oh, God, that's God's entrance, so to speak. It's to remain closed all the time. God goes through that entrance, whatever that means. Okay. Well, oh, good. Here's the beer. Okay. I was wondering, there was some beer missing. You guys drink beer? Okay. So they're cracking out the beers now. Okay. Okay. It's yeshiva tradition to eat cholent beer. Maybe we should do cholent one of these days. You guys do cholent? Okay. Who's going to make the cholent? That's the question. Burn, they just take it outside to burn it. By the way, they don't burn it entirely on the altar like an olah. Their parts are burned on the mizbeach, of course, but their parts are taken outside to be burned. Damnam nichnas lifnim la'ichal. Their blood is brought into the heichal. Like I said before, there's blood application within the temple itself. Umazim mimenu sham kasher mifurash b'Torah. It's sprinkled there, as says explicitly in the Torah. Every kind, certain way. Achas va'achas. The leftover blood is then spilled on the western base of the altar, the outer altar, because the western edge of the altar is what he first encounters when he's coming out of the temple. Whoa. Okay. Remember, they have a thing, the kids who collect the chumashim after laning on Shabbos morning, right? Which kid can carry the most chumashim without collapsing or without dropping them? So that's what that reminds me of. Okay, let's see what we got here. So there's quite a few chatos and nisrafos. You're going to describe them. What was it? I think we already mentioned this before. It's in the first paragraph, right? Let's review where the chatos what chatos are burned outside. I mentioned a few of them. We should have a complete list. Tesvav, it says. Here it goes. Chatos yachid hanekeva te'achel konim ve'ena ba min abakar chutz mishalosh chatot. Okay. Chatos tzibur is zachar. Chol chatos resir min ha'ezu ba. Fine. It says here. Chatos nasi she ez v'necheles chatos kohen mashiach she par v'nisrefet v'nika par bal kol mitzvos ashlishit par shemivi kohen gadol b'yom chatos v'nisraf. Okay. Fine. Those korbanos, look them up. So chatos nisraf is sometimes brought in an emergency situation when a big mistake has been made, or Yom Kippur. Let's see here. Umeichan mazin midaman. So where do they apply the blood? In the heichal. How's it work? How many sprinklings of the blood? Har v'sarish Yom Kippurim. The bull and the he-goat of Yom Kippurim, they basically mix the blood. Remember? Talks about they keep it separate, and at a certain point they're mixed together, right? Each one of their bloods needs to be sprinkled between the staves of the Ark of the Covenant. And he sprinkles between the staves. How wide was the Ark of the Covenant? Not even 2 amos wide. Okay, the staves were quite long, but the Ark of the Covenant was actually quite small, right? It says here, where's the Tanakh? I'll read you the construction of the Ark of the Covenant. You think about this, you imagine it was kind of big, but it's actually kind of small, right? Just like how big was the inner altar of the Mishkan, of the base of Mikdash? It was basically as high as a coffee table. You think of it as something normal, like it looks like the stender, or maybe that the shulchan where they read here. It wasn't even as tall as this table. Okay, it was actually quite small. So it says the first thing they were told to make was to make the Ark of the Covenant. How big was it? It says Okay, it is 2.5 amas wide or long, 2.5 amas long. Amma v'chitzi rokbo, 1.5 amas wide. Okay, v'ama v'chitzi komato, and 1.5 amas tall. So basically, the longest dimension where the kohen could stand is 2.5 amas. We said each amma is 48 centimeters or so. That's not a lot. That's basically 2.5 amas is 2.5 meters. You know, that's not a lot. So somewhere between them. And it says, wait, what they do in Second Temple times? The bottom weren't there. Basically, right down the middle where the ark used to sit, stone that was there. Make sense? That's where you're supposed to sprinkle the blood. The blood basically ends up on the floor, which is why eventually they would have to go in there and clean the floor. Right? The blood is applied there and it stays there for Yom Kippur, but eventually they would have to go in there and mop up. Next, Ushmona Parochet, and 8 on the curtain. Cohen, I think, would stand in the Kodesh, beyond the Kodesh of Kodeshim. Means the one turns back to the ark, like not allowed to do that. He'd walk out of the Holy of Holies and sprinkle the blood on the bowl. Arba hazayot or arba kronot mizbach hazahav shabeichal, and he would sprinkle from the both of them together on. He uses 4 sprinklings on the 4 corners of that mizbeach that's made out of gold, and it stood in the heichal. See, in each corner. Misheva hazayot al emtza shel mizbeach zeh, and another 7 sprinklings on the middle of the mizbeach. Okay, so he sprinkled the blood between the badim and onto the paroches and onto the golden altar. If he didn't have the proper kavanah, it's still kosher. You imagine the Kohen Gadol doesn't have the proper kavanah? Okay. How did that happen? Because he's under a lot of pressure, obviously. Kohen Gadol didn't let him sleep the previous night. Basically, the weight of Am Yisrael is on his shoulders. He has to confess all their sins and atone for everything he did. Somehow, when we can understand this, like Dr. England said, we would get to see this actually happen. We can understand what this does to atone for people. Suddenly, able to understand what it is they've done wrong and why it's not magic. Okay? Parim nisrafim, usirim nisrafim. Let's say you have parim nisrafim, sirim nisrafim. What does that mean? Those 4 types of sin offerings brought whatever circumstance. Okay, the par helm dover, etc. Zoreg bidam kol echad mehem. These are not brought in Yom Kippur. These are the ones. Let's say the Sanhedrin can make a mistake and rule to matir an avera they really shouldn't have. They basically matir till Shabbos or matir the Zara somehow. So if it's Haram Dover means they somehow matered it for the all of Am Yisrael. And then they point out, by the way, not just all of Am Yisrael, each tribe is considered its own separate, Am, right? Never used to be independent people. So if the Sanhedrin of one group did this, one shevet, so they have to bring basically a par for every shevet that did this. Okay. Zorek midam kol echad mehem sheva hazayot. Each one of these 7 sprinklings, ala parochet amavdelet bein hakodesh uvein kodesh hakodeshim. It's sprinkled on the paroches, and they mentioned that's one of the divides between the Kodesh and the Kodesh Kodashim. He doesn't go into the Kodesh Kodashim if it's just a par helm dover, right? Only on Kippur does he actually go in there and sprinkle on the floor. The Arba Zayot, Arba Chrono, Karnot, Mizbach Hazav. Another 4 sprinklings on the 4 corners of the golden altar. So it's less than what we do in Yom Kippur. With all these bloods that he's actually going to put on the golden altar, when the Kohen goes into the Mizbeach, by the way, it's only with the Kohen Gadol doing this. When you have a Par Helm Davar and the Sira Avodah Zarah, and of course Avodah Shem Purim, it's done by the Kohen Gadol. Omeid ben HaMizbeach LaMenorah VaMizbeach Lefanav. He stands between the Mizbeach, the altar, and the menorah. Menorah is on the south side, right? Right. Now Mizbeach Lefanav. He's facing the golden altar. It means the Kodesh Kodashim is to his left, the entrance to the temple is to his right, the Mizbeach is behind him. V'notein al karno Mizbeach mi-bachutz. And from the outside, he puts the blood on it. What does it mean the outside? It means he's basically reaching over the altar to get to the blood on the other side of the altar. The altar is not exactly that big, so it's something he could do easily. Okay. He starts with the northeast corner. Even though he's standing on the south side of this Mizbeach, he sprinkles on the northeast corner with Tzfoni Ma'aravit, and then the northwest corner, L'Ma'aravit Dromit, and then you can imagine that when this was happening on Yom Kippur or any time when they had to do this type of service, so what would be? The people would be in the courtyard. Remember, it's very hard to keep regular Jews out of the courtyard. There's no time where it says the Kohanim or Levim could say everybody out of the courtyard, right? It says holidays, Kohen Gadol would show up and it's like the place is just full of Jews, you know. So you would imagine that on Yom Kippur there are a lot of people looking, trying to look and actually see the Kohen Gadol doing this. Right? There was also a point on the holidays when what did they do? What was the highlight of the holidays? They would bring out the Kohanim would bring out the menorah and the shulchan and show them to people. Look, this is the glory of the temple, and then they open up the parochas to the Kodesh Kodashim and let people see in. Right? And what would they see? Well, the Kruvim. They'd see the Kruvim hugging. Hugging as close as possible. And that was something that they used to show off, like to say, this represents God's love for you. So they would show them. I think they show illustrations in the usual Machon Mikdash things. That was part of the holiday. That you could see into the actual temple. They let people see in. That wasn't normal. I mean, it wasn't a normal thing. They just opened up the parochas. But every now and then they would open up the parochas and people would see into the Kodesh Kodashim. Even in Second Temple times, they apparently did this because there are Kruvim there. Okay? So so you can imagine that when the Kohen was doing this, there were people who were really trying to get a good look. Okay. Of course, that's what people are trying to do. That's how we are. Part of the spectacle of the temple. Okay, let's go on to the next halacha. What halacha are we up to here? Oh, Tesvav. Har Kohen Mashiach says there's 4 special types of sin offerings. When the Sanhedrin decides they made a mistaken ruling, and when the Sanhedrin makes a mistaken ruling regarding Avodah Zarah, and when the Kohen Gadol himself, who's supposed to be a scholar, makes his own mistaken ruling and realizes his error, or if the king, Asher Nasi Echeta, as you pointed out, why does it say Nasi? Even though the Torah recognizes there's a king, the Torah also says that each tribe has a Nasi. Sometimes Nasi is the de facto leader. Every king is a Nasi. Not every Nasi is a king, even though every Nasi technically is in place of a king. Like we said last week, the Sanhedrin had a Nasi. And sometimes they even went and appointed a king over that Nasi. But the very minimum is the Sanhedrin, and there's no such thing as a Sanhedrin without a Nasi, and that's a prerequisite for having a king. So the Kohen Mashiach Abal Kol Mitzvos, when the Kohen Mashiach, that's Kohen Gadol, does this mistake, and by the way, that's why they mentioned why is he called Kohen Mashiach instead of Kohen Gadol? The Mishnah says if the Kohen was never actually anointed, he still is Kohen Gadol because he's Merubei Begadim. He's put on the vestments. So now, except for this one. If he was never anointed, he doesn't have this din. The Kohen Gadol himself has to receive the blood. And he's the one who sprinkles the blood within the temple. If who was received and sprinkled by an ordinary Kohen is still kosher. For example, the Nasi, when the king has to bring his special chatas, the service does not have to be performed by the Kohen Gadol. Even though it's a sprinkling within and on the parochas, normally Yom Kippur and all these other korbanos that are like this, they have to be done by the Kohen Gadol. In this case, it could be done by a Kohen Hedyo. And if it was supposed to be the Kohen Gadol for his own sin offering, it's even kosher if a regular Kohen did it, as opposed to the Yom Kippur service. If it was done by a regular Kohen, not kosher, right? Yeah. Sirei Avodah Zarah. Let's say these Sirei Avodah, the he-goats that they bring when the Sanhedrin ruled on a matter of Avodah Zarah, they basically matired, I don't know. Let's say they would tell people they could go to church. Okay, so aren't bringing chatos. It would be a person who did one of the four avodas or something like that. The four, like, slaughterings, bowing down to it, maktir. They ain't sirin on this rafin. And these are also the type of he-goats that are burnt. They're not eaten by kohanim afterwards. Siri avodah zara are special. They're not eaten. Loaded parish behen bator ketzad notin daman. When do we read this? It was just last week's parsha, right? Siri avodah zara is a special one, or is in it's in I think it's shlach. Getting confused here. I'll read you what it says here. Problem is, it says in Vayikra, it talks about the par helam davers in Vayikra. Asher nasiyachata v'chitishku. Okay, it says here. Let me read it. It says this is what's in Bamidbar at the end of Shlach. V'chitishku v'lo tasu eight kol mitzvot el asher diber Hashem al Moshe. Okay, well, if you don't do all the mitzvahs, what does it mean to do? You didn't do all the mitzvahs. So, like Rashi says, because all means it means you did the avera that corresponds to all the bad averas. Avodah zarah. Ein kol asher tziva Hashem alechem b'Yam min hayom asher tziva Hashem v'hala l'dorotechem. V'ya im einei adan estal shkaga. If it's done b'shkaga, einei ha'eda. Einei ha'eda is a reference to who? The Sanhedrin, the Chachamim. Okay. So it says v'asu kol eda par ben bakar chad olah. So they do this par. Okay. Sorry, this is a par helam davar. Par ben bakar chad olah. We have to clock. Okay. Yeah, and it doesn't say here what they do with it. Okay. There's nothing. It doesn't just say they do it. Okay. It's only in Vayikra that they have all the details. Okay. So these ones also, Param Dover doesn't say what to do, and Sirah Avodah Zarah, there's no real description there. Let's look in Vayikra also. Look at this. It's right in the beginning of Vayikra. Where is it? Here. It says here, Viv called out Yisrael Yishku v'ne'elam devar minei alcohol, right? Saying's been there. V'asu called Ashel Etzev Hashemu. And it says Hikriv alcohol, par ben bakar l'chatat, right? Par chatas. And it says here, it talks about Vizah Sheva Panim L'fnei Hashem, Pnei Paroches. That's a Kohen Mashiach. Asher Nasiyach Chata. If the king makes the mistake, or the Nasi makes a mistake, it says here, it says how to do that one. The Kohen Gadol, the Im Nefesh Achat, hold on one second. Where's the Kohen Mashiach? That's a regular person. And the Kohen Mashiach is over here. Ima Kohen Mashiach Yerta, Leshmanaam, Vikriva Chatato, Asher Chata, Parben Makar Tamim Lechatat. It has all these things about the Mizbach HaKtoret, all the details. But the rest it doesn't say. So you just learn it from the other ones. Just like that one, here's how you do it. You sprinkle on the altar, on the inside and everything. You do it. And they just say it's like a binyan, I guess. Make sense? You guys have the source actually there. It says you can open it up. They'll give it to you there. Okay, next halacha. B'chor v'aserva Pesach. What happens if you have a b'chor meiser and a Pesach? We said this is refrain already in this circumstance. We've had this expression before, like 5 times already. B'chor meiser and Pesach always have a lot of the same dinim. Why? Because they're a type of korban that's eaten, but they're not necessarily shlamim, right? Dam kol echad me'en tonun matana achat b'shvicha. These ones, not even like a shlamim. You only have to put one application of the blood by pouring, not by throwing. Right? When we do a shlamim, it says he has to get to the 2 corners. northeast corner and southwest corner, and splash the blood and make sure it goes like a gum. But we saw with Korban Pesach, what were the Kohanim doing? Passing the blood like this, and just like the blood gets to one place. It's not that there's a Kohen who takes the blood of the Korban Pesach and has to apply it to two opposite corners. Okay, one shvicha k'neged ha'yisod be'ezer ruach shirtza mishaloz zaviyotam mizbeach. Somewhere along the base, at three corners of the mizbeach, three possible corners. Sharei Kerem Mizrachi Jeromit, the southeast corner, that's the right of the kavesh, the ramp. Lo hayalav yisod k'moshe b'yarna. There was no yisod there whatsoever. The other corners had a little bit of a yisod. Even though yisod basically was missing, the entire east side and south side, it was at the beginning, the top of the east side. The northeast corner did have yisod, and the southwest corner had yisod. So wherever there's actually yisod, that's where you could spill the blood. Mizbeach shvicha, just pour it down. And obviously, there's no shari hadam. Why? He's just pouring it down. How do you know that these three korbanos only need one application, one spilling? It says with the firstborn animals, throw their blood on the altar. They have a tradition that applies also to a korban. Well, he puts them in the pen and lets them come out one by one, and the 10th one gets marked with red. Okay, and the Korban Pesach, you know what a Korban Pesach? It's the lamb. And tradition always includes these three together. They all get one application of blood, like the firstborn. Okay. Any thing that's remarkable here? Okay, no. It has to be at the corners, not in the middle of the mizbeach. Okay, you can't just splash it on the broad side of the, let's say, the north side of the mizbeach. Okay, even though it's kind of easy, it's the easiest way to hit it, but you specifically at the corners. Okay, kol hazvachim maktiron. This is an interesting one. Okay, maktirin emurihem al gam mizbeach. All the mizbeach, all of them have to have their entrails burned on the mizbeach. Okay, that's the emurin. But you first have to throw the blood. The coin catches the blood and throws it. Then they have to do this whole disembowelment process. And all the slaughtered sacrifices have to be skinned. So you're gonna have an olah. You first have to skin it. The meat and the bones are burned, but the skin is taken. It's used by the kohanim for whatever, they would take it to the tannery. And the same with other korbanos. The Korban Pesach also, they have to skin it before they do this. Before they roast it, they skin it. And then you take out the entrails. And also this skinning process is only done once the blood has been thrown. So once the blood is thrown, so then you have to somehow suspend the animal and skin it. By the way, people used to do this all the time. Why would you not skin your animal? You want to get the meat out of it, and also the skin has a lot of value to it. Nowadays, I guess that's where they get it, but most of us have never skinned an animal before. Remember the first time we went to the Tirgul Korban Pesach many years ago, it was still on a smaller scale. No one knew how to skin the goat after they used the goat or a sheep, whatever it was. No one knew how to skin except for Rabbi Gia. He's the mohel. He's the old Yemenite mohel who teaches all the other mohalim how to do it. So he was the one who went, oh, you don't know how to skin a goat? Come on, it's very simple. You make an incision here, and it's a whole process. No one there knew how to do it. So people are going to have to learn how to do it, because it says on what do you do on Korban Pesach, by the way? You can't trouble the Kohanim to skin your Korban Pesach for you. They're busy with the blood and putting the entrails on the altar. It says that regular Jews were in charge of skinning the Korban. They had places to hang the Korban, or if all the hanging places were taken, what would you do? You do it with your friend, yeah. There was a stick on shoulder here. You put your hands like this, and I'll hold like this, and they had this whole thing where two guys skin it together, and they suspend it themselves. Okay, so you have to do this yourself. And what does it say here? If it's the type of chatas that's burned, it's not going to get eaten. So you don't skin them. When it says take them out and be burned, it says their skin, their meat. The animal basically stays almost whole and just taken outside to be burned. Named Seitha Omer, Zorek Tchila. First he throws the blood of the chatas, V'achar kach mafshit, and then he skins the chatas. The Korea umotzi and then he cuts open the abdomen and takes out the entrails. Umaktiron. Then he burns them on the altar. Makes sense? Ever done anything like this before? No. Okay. So if you're a shochet, you have to know how to do this. By the way, part of the opening up is checking for trephus, right? So you have to know if you find an obvious treifa in an animal, it's usually one, it's not kosher. If it was cool, it's not kosher. If it's a korban, sometimes it apostles the korban after the fact. Right? So you have to check for trephas, and sometimes they have a demonstration. Can't believe it. Right after I came back from America, apparently every time they do this before Pesach, I miss it. They were supposed to do it at Shilo one day when we were at the Yeshivat Shilo. There's a Hesed Yeshiva in Shilo back in, I guess it was 2017. And I got a call. I had to get into Jerusalem, just get over here, whatever reason, at a teacher's meeting or something. And I missed it. They were going to slaughter a goat and do the whole, do this whole thing. So I missed that. And then just right before Pesach, remember I came back to Israel a week before Passover.
Yeah.
Apparently, the next night, the guy that learns with us on Shabbos and was just sitting in your seat earlier today had sponsored also the slaughtering of a whole sheep so they could learn Hilchos Treifus. And he didn't know I was back in town, so he didn't tell me to come. They did in his backyard. I totally missed it. Okay. So I guess we're going to have to do this every time I miss it. I guess God doesn't want me killing animals. Okay. So then he does this. Next halacha. Kol orot kochei kodashim lakohanim. So all the skins of the kochei kachim, that's the burnt offerings, the olos, the shlamim, the olos, the chatos, and the ashamos, those go to the kohanim. Which kohanim? We saw, well, the kohanim on duty are entitled to some, and other kohanim, if it's a regular person's korban, he picks his kohen, right? The kohanim get the skin, whether it's a personal sacrifice or it's a korban or if it's a public sacrifice. The only difference is the korban yachid, somebody gets to choose which kohen. Shemar, it says in the pasuk, or ha'ula asher yikriv, the skin of the burnt offering that he brought goes to the kohen. Aval orod kodshim kalim levalim. If it's kodshim kalim, that's a shlamim that a person brings, so he gets to keep the skin himself. If he brings a chatas or an ola, he picks his kohen and the kohen gets the skin. In this case, he can take it himself. Chol ola shelo zacham is be'ach b'vsara. Let's say the ola, the mizbeach didn't manage to get the flesh of the ola. For whatever reason, the ola wasn't burnt on the altar. Lo zachu ha-kohen b'ora. What does it mean, lo zacha mizbeach? What is it? Like I said, perhaps it was disqualified at a certain point. It was contaminated, right? You have any note there?
On which point?
It says here, "Dahainu she'akorban nifsal ifnei zrikat adam kodim shaya basar ro'ila aktar mizbeach." Okay. Somehow something happened to this ola. It was brought to the temple. It was slaughtered properly, but before they put the blood on the altar, it was disqualified for whatever reason. Nifsal. Okay. If the psul happened before the animal was skinned, so the skin doesn't go to the kohanim. If the psul happened after the animal had been skinned, but the kohanim only got the skin, so it stays theirs. The psul only happened to the rest of the korban sometime after he skinned it. And all these skins, who divides them? The Anshe Mishmar. Anshe Mishmar, when do they work? From Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos. Remember? They come in to work on Erev Shabbos, they leave Erev Shabbos and they get to eat, the outgoing, the lechem upon is divided among the outgoing Kohanim and the incoming Kohanim. All right? Remember, Rabbi Parnas used to talk about matpis. Matpis is takes a neder and he basically describes what he's vowing or he's swearing to do based on something that's in front of him. I'll do it like that. Matpis Okay. He says, I want this korban like Why is it for matpis? It's like two-face, like he grabs onto something that's already there. In you see with Naziris, for example, a person says, "I want to be like him." He's pointing to a Nazir. So what's that mean? He's taking a vow to be a Nazir, right? You're skeptical. Okay, fine.
This is something I've never heard before.
Okay, so matpis it comes up in hafla a lot. That's what it means. It's a way of saying it. Mat bias. Okay, he says that this this korban olah, he says, I want it to be bedek bias. But wait a minute, it's a korban olah already. Let's say it's an animal, a lamb. This is supposed to be a burnt offering. It should be for bedek bias. Bedek bias is the general temple fund, right? He can't say that this thing that's a korban is actually going to be used for the temple fund. So what does that mean? It means that the money, its cash value, has to be given to the temple also. So it's already a burnt offering. It'll stay a burnt offering. It'll go on to the mizbeach, will be burnt there. But now, because this sheep, I guess that what he was offering is 400 shekels. It costs 400 shekels. He's going to have to give another 400 shekels just to the bedek habayis also. You understand? The bedek habayis vow is not based on this olah. The olah has a certain value. So bedek habayis gets also the value. His oath is basically to give to bedek habayis. So that's zacharim shadinon shikru olot. Or a person says, all my property, or everything in that house is going to be temple property, makdish nechasav. And there are animals that could be brought as burnt offerings because there's male sheep in there, right? And male bulls, male bovine. Those can all be burnt offerings, right?
Okay.
So, ein oratim lakohanim. Those don't belong to the kohanim. Why? Because it says olas ish. Bedek habayis, let's say the temple treasurer suddenly has a whole lot of properties come into its possession. Why? This guy donated everything in his house. He didn't say that animal is supposed to be an olah and that animal is supposed to be an olah. He just said everything in the house is now temple property. So the temple treasurer comes, checks what's in the house, and says, there are 3 lambs here. If you have to go, you got to go. It's nice to see you again.
Thank you very much.
See you next time. So there are 3 lambs in this house. So bedek habayis says 3 lambs have just been given to the temple treasury. Because those lambs can be burnt offerings, they have to be burnt offerings. So it's as though the temple is bringing these burnt offerings as temple property. So that's not olas ish. That's not the burnt offering of a person. That's the burnt offering of the temple property. Even, let's say, korban tzibor, the lamb that's brought in the afternoon is mincha, that belongs to the tzibor. That belongs to a whole bunch of men. So that skin will go to the kohanim. But this animal doesn't belong to them. If the olah itself came from hektish, it was temple property, so the skin doesn't go to the kohanim. Ela yimacharuha orot. Instead, those skins of those korbanos are sold. Where's the money go? Goes to the temple treasury. V'yipalu levedek habayis, and that money goes to support the temple. Echad olas ish, o isha, o goy, o eved. Whether it's an olah of a man or a woman, a Gentile, a slave, sometimes a Eved Kanani can bring the korban, or tehen lakohanim. The skin goes to the kohanim. Lo nemar ish elo tzimeh hektish. When it says here, the burnt offering of a man, it only means as opposed to, humans brought the korban, as opposed to the mikdash itself, the temple treasury. And I guess that and because it's the end of the parak and close there. Any questions or comments? Closes the blessing. We get to see this halachas applied in practice. It's basically a business of the kohanim that they had. They dealt in skins. See you next time.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.